Hello, in this jQuery video, I'm going to show you how to bind events. So binding event handlers. So we got this little click event that we've assigned to this, or I should say, we're detecting when this click has occurred on a paragraph tag. But if we want to bind the event instead, process is almost identical, but instead of doing .click, you do .bind. Then you bind the type of event it is. So click, comma, this has a parameter of event. And if I were to, I'm just going to do a console log actually. Console.log. Hello. So if I comment this out, and I reload it, go to the console, click it, it works, the way it would have done if we used the click method. So why would we want to bind an event? There's two main reasons. One, if at a later date, for example, let's say the user does something and a new sort of click functionality is implemented as a result, or a new event functionality, you can bind another method to it. So at the start, when the page is loaded, it might have one particular functionality when the paragraph is clicked, for example, but maybe the user does something and the click event needs to do something else now. So you can rebind a function to it. And let me demonstrate that by, if I were to, I'm going to create a button. So button, and this button is going to say bind. I'll say an ID of bind button. And what I'm going to do is just do a typical, click. You can bind it if you want to, but I'm going to do it like this. Bind button. So this is a hash, or an ID I should say. So when it's clicked, we are going to bind it with this. And let me just sort of indentation. One last thing, I'm going to remove this code from here, and I'm going to say before bind, after bind, and if I reload, watch what happens. I click this, it says before bind. If I click bind, as you can see, printed nothing out, but if I click it now, it says after bind. But it still has this particular click as well, and that's because this is slightly different. This is just a a method on it. This is binding a particular event. So if you want to be able to override a particular event, make sure you just bind them. So if I do this now, watch this, and I replace this with before, so we can simulate the console logs. And now if I reload it, watch what happens. I click that, before bind. I click that, and I click it. We only get, still getting before bind. That is extremely weird. Well, we're still getting before bind as well. That right there. I need to unbind it first. So what I need to do is just select it. So do .unbind. Then you specify the actual method that you are unbinding. So click, for example. And now if I reload it, click that. If I click bind, now I'll click it. As you can see, we only get that. So my bad. What you need to do is, if you bind it normally, then when some event occurs, so in this case the bind button is clicked, you'll unbind it, and then you'll bind a new method to it. So that means it will run this bit of code when clicking the that button. So that just makes sure things are dynamic, things aren't fixed as well. You can go a step further if you want to, and actually have the method outside. So if I put, let's say, function here, and I'll say after bind, and you'll take a parameter of event, and we are going to grab hold of that, and I'm going to say after bind function what I'm going to do is comment this out. So this will still be in the code on the GitHub page. The only difference here is instead of binding it with an inline method, we bind it with a function call. So I do after bind, because I'm calling this function and I pass in the event as well. Now if I were to reload, click that, we get before bind. If I click that, that calls it immediately. But if you do not want to call it immediately and you want to actually properly bind it, I just want to show you all the different nuances of this. You need something similar to this, but instead you replace that code with this code right here. And now if we run it, watch what happens. Before bind, click that, we get nothing. If I click it, we just get the after bind function. So I might be thinking, what's the benefit of this approach versus this approach? Isn't this technically less code? And in a way it is, but you might be using this function in several different locations. Maybe you're binding it in several different locations, or you're just using it in general. Whereas this method is inline, and this function is unique only to this. And any changes that are made here are specific only to this selector. You might want that is fine. But if you don't, and you're going to use that functionality in multiple locations, wrap it up inside a function, and then literally just call that method. So you still have the inline method, but that inline method in itself calls another method. So that's it for binding and removing event handlers. If you have any questions, feel free to pop me a message. And as usual, I look forward to seeing you in the next video.